Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy History Channel. Tonight, we are traveling across deserts and seas, across marble temples and mountain peaks, to explore the 7 wonders of the world. These are the monuments that once seemed to defy gravity, time, and even belief itself. Some were raised by emperors seeking glory. Some were shaped by devotion. Others were carved into cliffs or lifted toward the sky in acts of bold imagination. A few still stand before us. Most have vanished into dust and memory. And yet their stories continue to tower over history. They tell us what ancient civilizations valued, what they feared losing, and what they hoped would last forever. This is a journey through ambition and artistry, through triumph and collapse. It is a story of how human beings have always tried to build something greater than themselves. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, simply settle in. Let your breathing slow. Let your thoughts drift. And allow your mind to wander across centuries of wonder and memory. Let's begin. The original 7 wonders were a travel list for curious ancient Greeks. Imagine arriving in a bustling harbor and hearing sailors trade tips like modern backpackers. Greek writers and travelers described a short list of sights worth a long detour, and they used it as a guide for what a cultured person should dream of seeing. The word for wonders also carried the feeling of things worth looking at, not just things worth owning. These were places you could stand before and feel your sense of scale shift. A temple could make a person feel small in the best way. A statue could feel like it was watching back. The list also acted like a map of influence, since many wonders sat in lands touched by Greek trade or conquest. It was tourism, status, and storytelling wrapped into one. Only one ancient wonder still stands: the Great Pyramid of Giza. That survival changes everything about how we imagine the ancient world. The pyramid is not a memory or a rumor. It is a physical weight on the landscape, and it forces a simple question. How did people with no engines, no cranes, and no steel raise something so immense? Its endurance is also a reminder that history is not fair. We lost the lighthouse that guided ships into Alexandria. We lost the statue that filled a temple at Olympia. We lost whole cityscapes that once felt permanent. Yet this one monument still catches the same sunlight it did thousands of years ago. Travelers in Roman times saw it as ancient already. Medieval visitors treated it like a marvel from another age. It stands as proof that some human plans outlast empires. Most wonders were built to impress visitors as much as gods. These monuments were public statements. They announced who had money, who had skill, and who could command armies of workers to shape stone and bronze into belief. Even when a wonder served a sacred purpose, it also served a political one. A ruler could point to a temple and say, "My city is blessed." A dynasty could raise a tomb and say, "Our name will not fade." Visitors carried those messages home like sparks. They told stories in marketplaces and taverns, and the fame spread beyond borders. That is why scale mattered. A modest shrine could be holy, but it could not dominate conversation. Grandeur was a language people understood at a glance. The wonders also trained the eye. They taught generations what power looked like in marble, gold, and towering height. Earthquakes, fires, and wars erased wonders faster than time alone. It is tempting to picture history as slow crumbling, but many losses arrived like sudden night. A single earthquake could snap a giant statue and scatter it across the ground. A fire could race through wooden roofs and turn a sanctuary into ash. War could strip a city for stone, metal, and pride. Sometimes destruction was not even hatred. It was practicality. Builders recycled blocks from ruins to raise forts, walls, and new neighborhoods. Catastrophe also has a cruel second act. After damage, a site becomes easier to loot. Repairs grow expensive. People move on. Then the memory starts to blur, and later writers fill the gaps with guesses. That is why the wonders feel half real and half mythical. The world that made them was fragile, even when the stone looked eternal. Each wonder became a symbol of power, faith, or royal ambition. A wonder did not have to speak in words. It spoke through presence. A lighthouse told sailors that a kingdom controlled the sea lanes and the grain routes. A colossal statue told enemies that the city had survived and would not bow. A lavish tomb told rivals that a ruler expected devotion beyond death. Temples carried an added charge, since they tied civic pride to the favor of a god. When pilgrims arrived, they were also meeting the city itself. In many places, religion and government moved together like deers. Donations were political. Festivals were diplomacy. Architecture was an argument made in stone. That is why the wonder list can feel like a tour of ancient priorities. These sites show what leaders wanted remembered. They also reveal what ordinary people were meant to feel when they looked up. Ancient writers argued about the list and swapped wonders freely. The list was never a sealed treasure chest. Different authors favored different sites, and their choices changed with fashion, politics, and access. One traveler might praise a temple because it was still standing and easy to visit. Another might favor a statue because it represented artistic mastery. Some lists focused on the Greek world, while others stretched outward toward Egypt and the Near East. Even the idea of exactly 7 mattered. 7 carried cultural weight, and it felt like a complete set. That meant the number could be fixed while the contents shifted. It also meant a wonder could rise in popularity like a star. When stories circulated, a place could become famous even for those who never saw it. The debate itself is revealing. It shows that wonder was partly in the eye of the storyteller, not only in the stone. The word wonder meant more than beauty. It meant human impossibility. Beauty is pleasing, but wonder is unsettling in a thrilling way. It is the feeling that your mind has no easy box for what you are seeing. Ancient visitors describe being overwhelmed, not just impressed. A wonder could make you question your own era. It could make you question what you thought was possible for hands, tools, and planning. That reaction was part of the point. Rulers wanted citizens to feel pride, and they wanted outsiders to feel awe. Engineers and artists also chased that reaction, since it proved their mastery. Wonder often lives at the edge of risk. Build too small, and nobody talks. Build too boldly, and nature may take it back. The 7 wonders sit right on that knife edge. They are reminders that imagination can be practical, and practicality can look like magic. Later ages created new lists because the first wonders were gone. As centuries passed, travelers kept searching for the feeling those old stories promised. They arrived and found ruins, missing statues, and foundations half buried. That absence invited replacement. People began naming new wonders that still stood, or that better matched the values of their own time. Medieval lists leaned toward holy sites and relics. Later lists celebrated engineering, exploration, and global reach. The urge behind the lists stayed the same. Humans want a handful of landmarks that can stand in for a whole world. A list also helps memory. It turns sprawling history into something you can hold in your head before sleep. New lists can be controversial. since they reveal who gets included and who gets left out. Yet they also keep curiosity alive. Even when the originals vanished, the idea of wonder kept traveling. Modern wonders were chosen by global voting, not by kings. That shift changes what the word wonder can mean. Ancient lists were shaped by a small circle of writers who had the education and money to travel. Modern lists invite millions to decide, and that opens the door to pride, marketing, and worldwide conversation. It becomes less about one culture's travel route and more about shared recognition. A monument can win because it represents a nation's story, or because it has become a symbol in films and photographs. Voting also raises questions. Does popularity measure greatness, or familiarity? Does a wonder need to be ancient, or can it be modern? Should natural landscapes count? The debate becomes part of the experience. In a way, the voting turns the world into a classroom where people compare histories. It also reminds us that heritage is not only preserved by experts. It is carried by millions of voices choosing what to celebrate. The wonders show how often humans build for eternity and fail. Every wonder carries a quiet lesson about time, even when it was built to deny time. Stone cracks, bronze bends, empires fall, shorelines shift, beliefs change. A monument can be loved in one century and raided in the next. Yet failure is not the end of the story. The loss can make a wonder more powerful, since imagination rushes in to rebuild what is gone. A vanished statue can become larger in the mind than any surviving sculpture. A collapsed lighthouse can still guide culture, since its name and idea live on. Even ruins can inspire new architecture, new myths, and new journeys. The Seven Wonders are not only about triumph, they are about the human habit of reaching beyond a lifetime. Sometimes the reach collapses. Sometimes it endures. Either way, it leaves a mark that keeps pulling us back. The Great Pyramid began as a tomb, but became a world icon. From the start, it was designed for a single person's afterlife, not for crowds. Yet across centuries, it slipped its original purpose and took on new roles in the human imagination. Priests once moved through its surrounding temples with ritual certainty. Later, foreign visitors arrived with questions instead of offerings. Some came to measure. Some came to marvel. Some came to prove a theory and left with more doubts than answers. It became a landmark for travelers long before guidebooks existed, a fixed point people could name when so much else changed. Conquerors could claim the land, but they could not move that silhouette from the horizon. Even today, it pulls together scholarship, tourism, and awe into one place. A tomb became a symbol of human reach. Its limestone casing once shone brightly in the Egyptian sun. Imagine the pyramid not as rough blocks, but as a smooth mountain of pale stone, so bright it could catch the eye from far across the plateau. The outer surface was carefully fitted, and it turned the structure into something that looked almost unnatural, like geometry dropped onto the desert. That shine was not only beauty, it was a statement. Light was sacred in Egyptian thought, and brilliance spoke of order, permanence, and divine favor. Over time, that polished skin vanished. Earthquakes loosened stones. Builders carried away prized blocks for new projects. What remains now is the rugged core, and it changes how we feel the monument. You can still sense the original intent, though. The pyramid was meant to be seen from a distance and to look finished, flawless, and impossible. Pyramid builders used ramps, sledges, and relentless organization. This was not a miracle of one clever trick. It was a triumph of planning that had to work every day in heat and dust, with little room for mistakes. Teams hauled heavy blocks on wooden sledges, and they reduced friction with water on the sand. Crews had roles, schedules, and overseers. Food supply mattered as much as stone supply, since people cannot lift history on an empty stomach. The most impressive tool may have been cooperation. Many hands moving in rhythm can outperform a lone genius with a brilliant idea. Work had to be staged like a living machine. Quarrying, transport, and placement could not fall out of step. The pyramid shows what happens when a society chooses one goal and organizes thousands of lives around it. Many pyramid stones were cut with surprising precision for the era. Precision is not only about neatness, it is about control. When stone faces meet cleanly, weight transfers predictably, and a structure gains stability that rough stacking cannot provide. The builders shaped blocks so they could sit with tight seams, and they did it with tools that seem humble by modern standards. Copper chisels, stone hammers, and abrasive sand sound inadequate until you remember what patience can do. Skilled workers learned the personality of each rock. They watched for fractures. They adjusted angles. They checked surfaces again and again. This was craftsmanship on a massive scale, repeated thousands of times without losing discipline. That consistency suggests training, standards, and inspection. It also suggests pride. Even where the seams are not perfect, the overall effect is astonishing. The pyramid feels less like piled stone and more like deliberate design. The pyramid's interior includes narrow shafts with debated purposes. Deep inside, the air changes. Sound dulls. Space tightens. Then you meet openings that feel too slim to be corridors and too intentional to be accidents. These shafts have sparked arguments for generations because they invite interpretation. Some see ventilation. Some see symbolic pathways aimed toward meaningful regions of the sky. Others see practical features linked to construction and access. What makes them so fascinating is how they sit between function and belief, and how easily the two can overlap. In a culture where the heavens shaped religion, direction mattered. A passage could be useful while also carrying meaning. The shafts also remind us that the pyramid is not a hollow shell. It is a carefully planned interior landscape, with choices hidden from the public eye. Mystery is built into the stone, and it keeps pulling questions forward. Ancient graffiti inside preserves workers' names, not Pharaoh's praise. In a monument made for a king, some of the most human traces belong to the people who did the lifting. Marks left inside include names and team labels, the kind of writing that feels casual and alive. It is the sound of workers talking to each other across time, not a formal inscription meant for ceremony. That matters because it pushes back against the old image of faceless labor. It suggests organized crews with identity and pride, and it places ordinary people inside a story usually told from the throne downward. You can picture a worker pausing, brush in hand, claiming a moment of presence before returning to stone and sweat. Those marks also change how we read the pyramid. It is not only an object. It is evidence of a workforce that ate, joked, competed, and endured together. The pyramid complex included temples, causeways, and royal boat pits. The pyramid was never meant to stand alone like a lonely mountain. It belonged to an entire sacred landscape, laid out for ceremonies that moved through space like a story. Temples anchored the ritual life of the site, and a raised causeway connected key points in a deliberate path. Nearby, long pits held boats, linked to royal symbolism and the journey of the sun across the sky. Seen this way, the pyramid becomes the peak of a much larger design, part architecture and part choreography. People would have processed along stone paths, carrying offerings, speaking prayers, and marking moments that joined the living to the dead. The surrounding structures also explain why the plateau feels so purposeful. It was planned as a complex, not as a single building. The wonder is not one shape. It is an entire world built for belief. Later rulers quarried pyramid casing stones to build medieval Cairo. History can be practical, even when it looks like vandalism. Fine limestone was valuable, and a ready supply sat nearby, already cut and already proven strong. As Cairo grew, builders reused stone from older monuments, and the pyramid's outer layer became a tempting quarry. This is not only loss. It is also a strange kind of continuity. Ancient material was folded into new walls, new mosques, and new streets, as if one era physically supported the next. It also shows how values shift. A wonder can feel untouchable to outsiders, while locals see it as a resource. That tension between preservation and reuse is as old as cities themselves. The pyramid survived the removal, but it changed its face. What we see now includes the scars of later needs. A monument built for permanence was reshaped by ordinary construction demands. The pyramids aligned closely to cardinal directions without modern compasses. Even before you think about height or weight, there is another kind of ambition here: orientation. To line up a massive structure with north, south, east, and west requires careful observation and repeatable methods. Ancient builders could watch the sky, track shadows, and use stars as reference points. That kind of work demands patience, since the sky does not rush for anyone. It also demands agreement, since the whole project must commit to a chosen line from the earliest planning stages. When alignment succeeds, it turns the pyramid into a statement about order in the universe. The building does not only sit on the earth, it participates in the cosmic grid. For a culture that linked kingship to stability and balance, that mattered. Every block laid on that axis reinforced the idea that the world itself could be made orderly by human hands. The Great Pyramid was the tallest human structure for millennia. For generations, no other building on Earth matched its reach into the air. That is hard to absorb, because we live among skylines that change every decade. The pyramid held its record through ages of new religions, new empires, and new technologies. People who had never heard of the pharaoh still looked up and felt the same jolt of scale. It became a kind of measuring stick for imagination. If you can build that, what else might be possible? Its long reign as the tallest also highlights how rare such ambition is. Most societies aim for durable and useful, not world-beating. To surpass it required not only tools, but an entire system that could support extreme construction. The pyramid's height is not a number. It is a story about focus sustained across time, and about a single project that stayed unmatched while history turned around it. The Hanging Gardens may be history's most famous wonder without proof. Some wonders stand in stone. This one stands in longing. Ancient writers describe a green mountain rising above a great city, with shade and perfume where dust and heat should have ruled. The problem is that the ground beneath the story stays strangely quiet. Archaeologists have not found a clear set of ruins that everyone agrees matches the descriptions. That gap creates a special kind of fascination. The gardens become a test of how history is made. A repeated story can harden into truth, even when evidence stays thin. It also shows how powerfully humans respond to the idea of nature being lifted and tamed. A palace can impress, but a garden in a dry land feels like a miracle. Whether it was real, misplaced, or exaggerated, the tale still pulls the mind toward an ancient horizon. Ancient descriptions suggest terraces lifted by clever irrigation, Picture layered platforms stacked like steps toward the sky, each one holding soil deep enough for trees. That image appears again and again in old accounts, and it leads straight to the hardest question. How do you keep such heights alive when rainfall is scarce? The answer must have been water brought upward on purpose, every day, without pause. The design would have needed channels that did not leak, and stonework that could handle constant moisture without crumbling. It would also have demanded caretakers, since a living wonder is never finished. Leaves fall, roots push, and soil compacts. Unlike marble, a garden grows wild if it is ignored. That is why the idea feels so bold. It was not only architecture, it was daily commitment turned into spectacle. The engineering would have been invisible from a distance, yet it would have been the true heart of the marvel. Some scholars place the gardens in Nineveh, not Babylon. The name Babylon carries a spell, so it is easy for later storytellers to attach anything magnificent to it. Yet some researchers point to a different setting. Nineveh was an Assyrian capital city, and it left behind records that speak more directly about grand waterworks and cultivated landscapes. This possibility reframes the mystery as a mix-up of memory, translation, and reputation. If the gardens belong to Nineveh, then the famous wonder is not missing. It is mislabeled. That would mean generations have been staring at the right idea through the wrong window. It also raises a deeper thought. Wonders often become brand names. Once a city is known for greatness, it attracts legends the way a bright lamp attracts moths. The debate keeps the gardens alive because it turns a vanished place into an active investigation, not a closed chapter. The story may mix real gardens with later imagination. History often travels like a whisper that picks up new words along the way. A visitor sees an impressive palace garden. Another visitor hears the tale and enlarges it. A writer repeats it and adds a dramatic flourish, since readers love a scene they can picture. After enough retellings, the original garden may still be in the story, but it is wearing layers of fantasy like new clothing. That does not make the accounts useless. It makes them human. They show what people wanted to believe about ancient power. They also show how rare it felt to see abundant greenery in a dry region, especially if you came from elsewhere. A real orchard could become a hanging paradise in the mind of someone who saw it only once. The gardens may be a collage of truth. It could be several sites compressed into one shining image. If the gardens existed, they required constant water in arid heat. A stone temple can endure neglect, but a planted terrace cannot. Heat pulls moisture from leaves. Wind wicks water from soil. Sun turns damp earth into dust. So if those terraces were truly lush, then the city had to feed them water like a heartbeat. That means planning beyond the initial build. Someone had to secure a steady supply, and someone had to supervise it through dry seasons and political turmoil. The gardens would have been as much an institution as a structure, with labor assigned and failure punished by withering branches. This is why the wonder feels so dramatic. It was not only size, it was defiance. Keeping trees thriving above ground level in a harsh climate is a daily victory over the environment. In that sense, the gardens would have been a performance of control. Every green leaf would have signaled that the rulers could command resources, time, and attention. Ancient engineers used screws, chains, or pumps to raise water. To lift water, you need motion that can repeat without breaking. Ancient thinkers offered possibilities that sound almost modern when you picture them. A turning screw could push water upward as it rotates. A chain of containers could scoop and spill in a steady loop. A series of pumps could move water in stages, like climbing stairs. Each method demands strong materials, careful maintenance, and people trained to keep the system running. It also demands energy, whether from humans, animals, or flowing water redirected to do work. That hidden effort is part of what makes the gardens so compelling. Visitors would see greenery and shade. Behind the scenes, they would have needed a choreographed machine of muscle and wood and metal. If such a mechanism existed at scale, it would stand among the most impressive technologies of the ancient world. The wonder would not only be what grew, it would be how it stayed alive. The gardens symbolized luxury because green space meant power. In a fertile valley, a garden can be pleasant. In a dry region, it can be a proclamation. Water is life, and life is control. A ruler who can spare water for ornament is a ruler who has already secured survival. That is why a grand garden can serve as a political message without a single spoken word. It says the granaries are full. It says the canals are protected. It says the city can afford beauty. Gardens also create a softer form of authority. They invite admiration instead of fear. They can make a visitor feel welcomed, then quietly overwhelmed. The contrast is part of the trick. Outside the walls, the landscape may be harsh and uncertain. Inside, there is shade, fruit, and birdsong. That difference turns greenery into theater. It makes the palace feel like the center of the world, and it makes the ruler feel like the one who can bend nature into comfort. No surviving Babylonian text clearly describes the Hanging Gardens. For a wonder so famous, the silence is striking. We have many inscriptions and records from Mesopotamian cultures, and they often celebrate building projects with pride. Yet there is no surviving Babylonian text that straightforwardly says, "Here are our hanging gardens, and here is how we built them." That absence has weight. It suggests that later fame might have outgrown local documentation, or that the gardens belonged to a different place entirely. It also reminds us how fragile evidence can be. Tablets break, libraries burn, languages fall out of use. What survives can be shaped by accident as much as importance. The result is a mystery with sharp edges. A modern reader expects receipts, and the ancient world does not always provide them. That gap forces us to rely on indirect clues, and it turns the gardens into a lesson in humility. Sometimes the past refuses to confirm what we most want to believe. Greek writers may have repeated hearsay from travelers and soldiers. Stories move along trade routes as easily as goods. A merchant hears a tale in one city and retells it in another. A soldier returns from campaign and describes a foreign palace with awe or exaggeration, since listeners crave the taste of distant places. Greek authors often relied on such reports, especially when travel was costly and dangerous. That does not mean they lied. It means they worked with the best information they could gather, and they wrote for audiences who loved marvels. Over time, repetition can smooth away uncertainty. A phrase like, "they say," can disappear, and a rumor becomes a statement. The gardens may have spread through this process, gaining vivid details as the story gained fame. That possibility makes the wonder feel even more alive. It becomes a shared dream, circulating through the ancient Mediterranean, shaped by countless voices. Even if the original site was modest, the collective telling could build it into a towering legend. The gardens remain a reminder that wonders can be legends. Not every wonder needs a ruin to matter. Some live as questions, and questions can be more enduring than stone. The gardens invite us to think about what we praise. Is it the object itself, or the idea behind it? A high terrace covered in trees is an idea of abundance. It is an idea of engineering that serves beauty. It is an idea of comfort in a difficult landscape. Even if the physical gardens are lost, Those ideas have traveled through centuries, inspiring painters, poets, and architects who keep trying to make the dream real. The gardens also warn us not to confuse fame with certainty. A story repeated for 2,000 years can still be unproven. That is not a failure of history. It is part of its texture. The ancient world reaches us in fragments, and our minds stitch them into wholes. The Hanging Gardens sit right at that seam, where evidence ends and imagination begins. The statue of Zeus at Olympia was made of gold and ivory. To ancient eyes, the materials alone would have felt like a declaration. Gold signaled wealth beyond counting, and ivory carried the aura of distance and rarity. This was not carved from a single block. It was built like a luxurious illusion, with ivory shaped into lifelike skin and gold forming drapery that seemed to glow in torchlight. Imagine stepping into a sanctuary and realizing the most precious substances you know have been turned into a human figure on a god-sized scale. The craft required specialists, careful fitting, and constant attention to keep delicate surfaces from suffering. It also carried risk, since treasure invites theft and fire invites disaster. Yet the choice of materials made the message unmistakable. This Zeus was not only worshipped, he was displayed as the richest presence in the room, and perhaps the richest presence in Greece. It sat inside a temple so huge it seemed to fill it. The effect was theatrical in the best way. You did not approach it across an open plaza where you could measure it from afar. You entered a temple and your eyes adjusted, and then the space itself revealed the scale. The figure was seated, yet it still dominated the interior like a living mountain. Ancient writers loved to say that if Zeus stood up, he would break through the roof. Whether or not that was literally true, the feeling mattered more than the measurement. The temple became a frame, and the statue became the whole story. Light would have been controlled, with shadows pooling in corners and highlights catching on polished surfaces. Sound would have changed too. A crowd's murmurs would feel smaller, almost swallowed. The design turned architecture into a tool for awe. You were not simply visiting a shrine. You were stepping into a room that seemed built around one overwhelming presence. The sculptor Phidias treated the statue like a living presence. This was not the kind of work you finish and forget. The project demanded planning like a director staging a performance. Phidias had to imagine what worshippers would feel from the doorway, and what details would reward those who came closer. He also had to solve practical problems, since different materials age in different ways. A crack in ivory or a loosened fitting could ruin the illusion. Stories about the workshop suggest a place where art and engineering lived side by side, and where decisions were tested before they became permanent. What makes this so captivating is the mindset behind it. The goal was not a nice statue. The goal was presence. The figure had to seem aware, calm and powerful, as if it belonged there more than the visitors did. That ambition shaped every surface, and it helped turn a single artwork into a wonder spoken about for centuries. Ancient visitors described the statue as overwhelming, not merely beautiful. People did not write about it the way they wrote about pleasant scenery. They described a sensation, like standing too close to something sacred and vast. For some visitors, the experience carried comfort, as if the world had a stable center. For others, it carried a chill, because the scale and expression could make a person feel judged. That emotional range is part of why the statue became famous. It was not only an object to admire. It was a moment that rearranged the mind. Travelers came with expectations shaped by rumor, and many still said it exceeded what they had imagined. The setting amplified this effect, since Olympia was already charged with ritual and competition. By the time you entered the temple, Your senses were prepared for significance. Then the figure delivered it. The wonder was not only in craftsmanship. It was in the way it could turn a visitor into a storyteller, eager to describe what words could barely hold. The throne was decorated with figures, beasts, and sacred scenes. Most people picture the god first, yet the seat beneath him mattered too. The throne functioned like a carved universe, packed with imagery meant to be read and reread. Figures and animals could hint at myths, victories, and divine authority, without needing any explanation spoken aloud. A visitor could study it like a visual poem, moving from one detail to the next, noticing patterns and symbols that felt meaningful even if they were not fully understood. This density of decoration also served another purpose. It turned the statue into a world, not a single form. The eye never ran out of places to land. That sustained attention is a kind of power. It keeps a crowd quiet. It keeps individuals lingering. It also invites comparison, since each viewer notices something different and shares it later. The throne was not background. It was part of the wonder's strategy, using narrative images to deepen the sense that Zeus belonged to a larger cosmic order. Ivory panels had to be kept from cracking in dry air. Ivory can be astonishingly lifelike, yet it is also sensitive, like a material that remembers it once belonged to a living creature. Changes in moisture can cause it to split, warp, or dull. That meant the statue demanded care long after the sculptor stepped away. The temple staff could not treat it like stone. They had to manage the environment, watch for signs of stress, and respond before small damage became permanent. This makes the wonder feel even more alive, because it depended on ongoing human attention. Maintenance became a form of devotion. It also created tension. A priceless surface could be threatened by something as ordinary as a dry season. When you picture ancient visitors staring upward in awe, it is striking to realize how much invisible work kept that moment possible. The wonder was not only created once, it was preserved day after day, as if the statue had a fragile skin that needed protection. A pool of oil helped preserve materials and reflect light. Near the statue, a pool held oil that served more than one role. It could help protect delicate surfaces, and it could also transform the viewing experience. Oil catches light differently than water. It can create a warm, steady sheen, and it can reflect a flickering glow in a way that feels almost theatrical. Imagine torchlight moving, then seeing that movement doubled below, as if the room itself were alive with shifting fire. The reflection would make gold appear richer and ivory appear softer, and it would deepen the shadows that frame the figure's face. This is not just a clever trick. It is an early example of designing for atmosphere. The statue was meant to be seen under certain conditions, at certain angles, with certain sensations in the air. The pool helped make the space feel curated, like a stage built for reverence. It also reminds us that ancient wonders were multimedia experiences, combining sculpture, architecture, and controlled light into one unforgettable encounter. The statue's destruction is linked to fire and later upheaval. One of the saddest truths about ancient marvels is how easily they can be undone. Materials that look eternal in stories can be vulnerable in reality. A fire does not care about artistry. It turns wood to ash and weakens supports, and heat can ruin surfaces that took years to perfect. Later centuries also brought instability, and instability is dangerous for treasures. When society shifts, temples lose protection, and priceless objects become targets or burdens. The exact path to the statue's end remains debated, which adds a haunting quality. There is no single clear moment where the world watched it fall. Instead, there is a fading, like a lamp going out behind closed doors. That uncertainty forces you to imagine what was lost, not only the materials and labor, but the experience itself. People traveled long distances for that encounter. Then, at some point, the encounter became impossible. The wonder became a memory, and memory became awe that remained. Olympia's games honored Zeus long before modern sports existed. The site was not chosen at random. Olympia was sacred ground, and athletic competition there was a form of tribute, not mere entertainment. Victories brought glory to individuals, yet they also reflected honor on cities, families, and patrons. The festival drew crowds, diplomats, and traders, turning sport into a gathering that reshaped politics and reputation. Imagine the tension of a race where the prize is not money, but a crown and a name remembered. The air would carry dust, cheers, and the sharp focus of competitors who believed the gods were watching. This context helps explain why a monumental Zeus belonged there. The statue did not stand in isolation. It stood at the heart of a cultural engine that celebrated strength, discipline, and fame. The Games created a rhythm of return, since people came again and again across years. That repeated pilgrimage kept Olympia alive in the Greek imagination, and it kept the statue famous through constant retelling. The statue shows how religion and spectacle blended in Greece. In the ancient world, awe was not a side effect. It was a tool. Religion used ceremony, architecture, and art to shape feeling, and feeling shaped belief. A great statue could act like a meeting point between the human and the divine, not because it was literally alive, but because it made devotion easier to focus. At the same time, it drew visitors who came partly for wonder itself. That mix is fascinating because it blurs categories we often separate. Worship and tourism could share the same doorway. Ritual and reputation could feed each other. The city gained status by hosting a site that strangers talked about, and the site gained status because the city protected it. Olympia became both sanctuary and destination, and the statue became both sacred image and cultural headline. This blending also reveals something timeless. Humans crave meaning, and humans crave spectacle, and we often build places that satisfy both. The statue of Zeus is a perfect example of that powerful overlap. The temple of Artemis at Ephesus was rebuilt after deliberate arson. A man named Herostratus set it on fire for one reason: to make his name unforgettable. The act worked in the worst way because the story still clings to the temple like smoke. Yet the aftermath is what turns this into a wonder of human stubbornness. Instead of accepting loss, the people of Ephesus rebuilt on an even grander scale, as if daring history to try again. The new temple became a statement that fame could be earned through creation, not destruction. Travelers came to see what had risen from the ashes, and they carried the tale across the Mediterranean. Even the attempt to erase the shrine became part of its legend. It is a reminder that monuments are not only stone, they are also reputation, and reputation can survive fire. Its columns were so numerous that visitors felt surrounded by stone. Approaching the sanctuary was like stepping into a forest that never shed its leaves. Columns marched in long rows, and each one multiplied the sense of scale until your eyes stopped trying to count. The effect was not only size, it was rhythm. Repetition creates power, and the temple used repetition the way music uses a beat. As you moved, the spaces between columns opened and closed, like slow breathing, revealing glimpses of shadow and brightness. The building could make a crowd feel hushed without anyone speaking, because the architecture did the talking. A single grand doorway can impress, but a whole ring of towering supports can overwhelm. Visitors described the sensation of being held inside the structure's order, as if the human body had to obey the geometry around it. The columns were not decoration. They were the temple's spell. Artemis here was worshipped differently than the huntress of later myth. If you arrived expecting the familiar image of a swift archer in a short tunic, you would have been surprised. At Ephesus, the goddess carried a different identity, shaped by local tradition and older roots. She was tied to protection, prosperity, and the life of the city in a way that went beyond woodland stories. That difference mattered because it shows how flexible ancient religion could be. A name could travel, yet the meaning could change when it met new landscapes and new communities. Pilgrims did not come only to admire a building. They came to meet the specific power they believed lived there. This local Artemis belonged to Ephesus the way a patron belongs to a household. The temple was not just famous. It was personal to the people who lived in its shadow. The temple served as sanctuary, treasury, and civic pride. It functioned like a sacred bank, a public symbol, and a refuge all at once. People trusted holy spaces, so they brought valuables to store under divine protection. That made the temple economically important, not only spiritually important. It also offered asylum, a place where certain rules changed and where a desperate person might find a pause from violence. At the same time, the building broadcasted the city's status to every visitor who arrived by road or sea. Ephesus could point to it and say, "We are wealthy, we are organized, and we are blessed." These roles reinforced each other. Wealth helped fund grandeur. Grandeur attracted pilgrims. Pilgrims brought offerings and trade. The temple became a living center of the city's identity, where belief and practical life intertwined. It was not a quiet corner for prayer. It was a beating civic heart made of marble. It was funded by kings and merchants seeking prestige. Money flowed toward the temple because donations brought a form of immortality. A ruler could give lavishly and appear pious, generous, and powerful in one stroke. A merchant could contribute and signal success to rivals and partners, especially in a world where reputation determined opportunity. Funding also created connection. If you helped build the shrine, you gained a claim to its fame. The temple became a stage where elite competition could play out without open conflict. Gifts were not only offerings, they were announcements. Visitors could see that the city attracted patrons from far beyond its walls, and that drew even more attention. This is how wonders grow. They are not simply built by workers and architects. They are fed by ambition from many directions. Each contributor wanted to be associated with something that would outlast a lifetime. The temple offered that promise, glittering and public. Floods and raids damaged the site across centuries. A wonder can feel invincible when it is new, but survival is a long test. Water can undercut foundations, soak ground that looks solid, and turn stable plans into slow-sinking problems. Human violence can arrive faster. Raids do not need to destroy every stone to change a site forever. They can steal treasures, break confidence, and make repairs seem pointless. Over time, repeated blows create a different kind of ruin. Not one dramatic collapse, but a series of wounds. Each recovery requires money, leadership, and faith that rebuilding still matters. When those resources weaken, a monument becomes vulnerable, even if parts of it remain standing. The temple's story is not one clean tragedy. It is a long struggle against both nature and human greed. That struggle makes its former greatness feel even more astonishing, because it had to endure so many threats just to remain itself. The temple's marble glittered, yet it stood on marshy ground. That contrast is almost unbelievable. Marble suggests permanence, while marsh suggests shifting softness. Yet builders chose the site and committed to making it work, which tells you how important location and tradition were. The shimmering stone would have caught sunlight in a way that made the structure look newly washed, even from a distance. Meanwhile, beneath it, the ground demanded constant respect. Marshy soil can behave like a slow-moving creature. It absorbs, it settles, and it changes with seasons. Choosing to build there meant engineering had to meet ambition head-on. The temple's brilliance was not only aesthetic, it was defiance. It announced stability while sitting above uncertainty. For visitors, that tension may have added to the awe. The building did not only rise high, it rose despite the earth beneath it. The temple was beauty balanced on difficulty, and that made it feel like a victory over the landscape itself. Builders used layers to stabilize foundations against earthquakes. When the ground can shake, strength is not only about thick walls. It is about how a structure meets the earth. Layered foundations can absorb movement, spread force, and reduce the chance that one violent moment becomes total collapse. This kind of planning reveals a practical intelligence beneath the temple's splendor. The builders were not just chasing grandeur. They were negotiating with a restless region, and they were doing it with the tools and understanding available to them. Stabilizing a massive sanctuary meant thinking about what happens when stone wants to slide, when columns want to sway, and when joints want to fail. The temple's design was therefore a conversation with risk. Every visitor who felt safe inside it was benefiting from choices made long before, choices that considered the invisible power underfoot. A wonder often looks like art, but it survives like engineering. The temple's foundations were part of its genius. One surviving column was reassembled from scattered fragments. What remains today is not the full wonder, yet even a single column can carry an entire world in its shadow. Reassembled pieces are like a puzzle made from centuries of loss, with each fragment hinting at what once stood beside it. The act of rebuilding that column is also a kind of storytelling. It takes broken stone and gives it a readable form again, so modern visitors can feel scale with their own bodies. You can stand near it and imagine hundreds more rising around you, closing the sky into patterned corridors. The column becomes a bridge between imagination and evidence. It does not ask you to trust a tale alone. It shows you a physical survivor, patched together from what time spared. That reconstruction also honors the original builders, because it acknowledges that even in ruin, their work still commands attention. A fragment can still be a landmark if it carries enough meaning. The ruins still hint at a structure once called unmatched. Ruins can be frustrating because they refuse to give a complete picture, yet they can also be powerful because they leave space for the mind to build. At Ephesus, the remaining stones suggest a plan that was not ordinary. You can trace outlines, measure distances, and realize that the temple's footprint was meant to dominate. Broken pieces of carved detail imply a surface that once rewarded close looking, not just distant admiration. There is also a strange intimacy in ruins. A living temple is overwhelming and untouchable. A ruined one invites you to walk among its remains, to see tool marks, to notice how blocks fit, and to feel how heavy the past really is. The unmatched reputation becomes easier to believe when you stand where it stood. Even reduced, the site still communicates ambition. It whispers that people once gathered here and thought, nothing else compares. The mausoleum at Halicarnassus gave us the word Mausoleum. A single tomb became so famous that its name turned into a category. When later builders wanted to describe a grand burial monument, they reached for the memory of this one. That is a rare kind of afterlife, not carved in stone but carved into language. It also tells you how startling the structure must have seemed to visitors. People did not talk about it as a local tomb. They spoke of it like a landmark that belonged to the whole world. Over time, the original building fell, yet the word kept walking forward through centuries, attaching itself to new memorials in new countries. Every time you hear the word today, you are hearing a faint echo of Halicarnassus. This wonder proves that architecture can travel farther than armies. It can leave a footprint in the way humans think, speak, and remember the dead. It was a tomb built for Mausolus, a Persian satrap. Mausolus ruled Caria under the Persian Empire, and his position sat in a complex space between local identity and imperial power. That tension often produces bold displays, since a ruler must look legitimate to many audiences at once. A monumental tomb solved that problem. It made authority visible, permanent, and hard to ignore. The project also carried a personal message. It said that Mausolus expected his name to outlast his lifetime, and he wanted the coastline itself to keep repeating it. In a world where politics could shift suddenly, a tomb of this scale was a way to claim stability. It also turned mourning into statecraft. The building was a public event, not a private grief. Visitors could read it as a sign of wealth, organization, and ambition, all compressed into one structure. Even the choice to build so grandly was a political statement written in stone. Greek and local styles merged in its bold design. This was not a simple copy of a Greek temple, and it was not purely local tradition either. It was a deliberate blend, designed to impress many kinds of visitors and to speak several architectural languages at once. You could recognize familiar Greek elements, yet the overall form pushed beyond what most people expected from a tomb. That mix mattered because it reflected the crossroads world of the Eastern Mediterranean, where trade, diplomacy, and conquest brought cultures into constant contact. The building became a kind of public translation. It said, "We belong to this region, and we can also compete with the grandest ideas from abroad." That cultural confidence is part of what made it a wonder. It was not only large, it was sophisticated in identity. It stood as proof that art can be political without needing slogans. Style itself can declare who a ruler is. Sculptures covered it with battles, horses, and mythic heroes. The tomb did not settle for plain walls. It wrapped itself in storytelling. Carved scenes of conflict and legend transformed the monument into a narrative you could walk around, like a stone scroll. That choice turned memory into drama. Battles suggested strength and protection. Horses suggested prestige and motion, as if the monument itself had energy. Mythic figures linked the ruler's world to timeless stories that visitors already knew, which made the building feel familiar and monumental at once. Sculpture also created layers of experience. From far away, you saw the silhouette. Up close, you could lose minutes on a single panel, tracing muscles, weapons, and faces. That detail rewarded attention and encouraged retelling. People left not only saying it was big, they left describing what they saw, what it meant, and what it made them feel. The tomb became an artwork you inhabited with your eyes. Its height made it a landmark for sailors approaching the coast. Long before a ship reached the harbor, the structure could announce the city. Rising above the surrounding buildings, it would have served as a visual anchor, a fixed point that told sailors they were nearing land and commerce. That practical role blended perfectly with ambition. A ruler does not mind being useful if usefulness also spreads fame. Imagine approaching by sea after days of open water and seeing a towering monument standing calm against the sky. It would feel like a greeting and a warming at the same time. It said, "This place is wealthy enough to build beyond necessity." It also said, someone powerful is remembered here. For travelers who could not read local language, the height itself spoke clearly. Landmarks become stories because they are shared reference points. Sailors would have pointed it out, described it to newcomers, and carried its image to other ports. The tomb helped map the coast in human memory. Earthquakes later toppled the structure, stone by stone. The fall of a wonder is rarely as neat as a single dramatic moment. Both quakes can loosen a monument in stages, turning tiny shifts into widening cracks, then turning cracks into collapse. What is haunting is the slowness that can follow the shaking. A structure may stand damaged for years, exposed to weather, theft, and neglect, until the next tremor finishes what the first began. That kind of ruin feels almost like erosion with a heartbeat. It also reminds us that the greatest enemy of monumental ambition is often the ground itself. Builders can plan for strength, yet the earth does not sign agreements. When the mausoleum began to fail, the loss would have been both material and emotional. A famous landmark becomes part of a city's identity. Watching it break apart would feel like watching status and memory crumble in public. The wonder turned into fragments, and those fragments began a new chapter. Knights reused its blocks to build a fortified castle. Centuries after the tomb was built for remembrance, its stones found a new purpose in defense. The Knights of St. John needed strong walls, and the fallen monument offered ready-cut material. That shift is almost poetic in its bluntness. A memorial meant to glorify one life was pulled into a building meant to protect many lives. It also shows how time changes the value of things. What one era treats as sacred, another treats as a quarry. Yet the reuse carries a strange continuity. The tomb's stone did not vanish. It moved from artistry to warfare, from elegance to endurance, from celebration to survival. If you stood at the later castle, you might be surrounded by pieces that once belonged to a wonder. That thought can make history feel physical. Civilizations are not only successive, they are layered. One age can literally build itself out of the remains of another. Some sculptures from the tomb now sit in major museums. The monument broke, but parts of its artistry traveled. Sculpted fragments were collected, preserved, and eventually displayed far from their original sunlight and sea air. That relocation changes the way we meet the wonder. In a museum, you can stand close, study chisel marks, and see details that might have been high above eye level in antiquity. You meet the artists almost directly. Yet something is also lost because the sculptures were designed for a specific setting, with architectural lines and open sky completing the experience. This tension creates a fascinating question about preservation. Is it better to keep fragments safe or to keep them in place, even if time would destroy them? The mausoleum's surviving pieces now act like ambassadors. They tell visitors that the wonder was real, and they hint at the richness of what has disappeared. A fragment can still carry the force of a whole if it is carved with enough skill. The tomb's fame outlived the ruler it was meant to honor. That outcome is both the goal and the irony of monumental memorials. Mausolus wanted remembrance, yet most people who know the tomb's legacy cannot tell you much about his policies or daily life. They remember the building, the idea, and the word that followed. In a way, the structure became the main character, and the person became the subtitle. This happens often in history. A monument can simplify a complex life into a single image. It can turn a ruler into a symbol of ambition, wealth, or cultural blending, even if the reality was messier. The fame also grew because travelers repeated the story. Each retelling polished it, making the monument feel larger than its original context. That is the strange power of wonders. They detach from the details that created them and become universal reference points. The tomb did not just preserve memory. It transformed memory into legend. It proved that memorials can reshape language as well as skylines. Most buildings change a horizon. Few change vocabulary. This one did both, and that double impact is part of its wonder. A skyline influence fades when a structure falls, but a language influence can persist even when stone is gone. The word mausoleum became a portable monument. It can be spoken in any country, and it still carries the idea of grandeur linked to death and remembrance. That linguistic legacy also shows how humans share meaning. We name new things after famous old things because names are shortcuts for awe. When a later generation builds a grand tomb, they borrow the ancient reputation to elevate the new structure instantly. In that way, the mausoleum keeps building itself in the mind, over and over. It also invites a broader thought about legacy. Sometimes the most permanent part of a wonder is not the marble. It is the story people keep repeating until the story becomes a word. The Colossus of Rhodes was built to celebrate a long siege. Rhodes had endured a brutal test of nerves, walls, and supply lines, and when the danger finally lifted, the city needed more than relief. It needed a statement. The decision to build a colossal statue turned survival into a public victory that no visitor could miss. Imagine the message to rival powers arriving by sea. This is a city that was attacked, and this is a city that remained standing. The monument also turned memory into a shared civic identity. People who lived through the siege could point upward and feel the story made solid. People born later could inherit pride without having witnessed the fear. In that way, the statue was not only art. It was a victory archive, towering above the harbor landscape, telling the same story every day without speaking a word. It honored Helios, the sun god, as protector of Rhodes. Choosing Helios was not random decoration. Rhodes claimed a special relationship with the sun, and the god's image tied the city's safety to a divine guardian that rose each morning without fail. That symbolism is powerful because it feels personal. A storm can swallow ships. An army can surround walls. Yet sunrise keeps returning, and it brings the sense that order still holds. Building a giant Helios turned that daily reassurance into a permanent presence. It also made theology visible to outsiders. Sailors who knew nothing of Rhodian politics could still understand a radiant god towering above the coast. To honor Helios at this scale was to say that protection was not only military, it was cosmic. The stature implied that the city lived under a watchful light, and that any threat would have to face more than stone defenses. It was made from bronze plates over an iron framework. This was not a single poured statue. It was closer to building a giant hollow shell, where metal skin wrapped around a strong inner skeleton. That method made the project possible, but it also made it daring. Every plate had to be shaped, fitted, and secured, with seams that could withstand wind and weather. The iron framework carried the burden, while the bronze gave the statue its shining face. Think about the logistics. Bronze must be produced, transported, and lifted into place. Iron must be forged in pieces that can lock together reliably. The builders had to solve problems that scale creates, like how to keep lower sections stable while higher sections are still unfinished. The result would have looked like a miracle to visitors, yet it was actually an orchestra of metalworking skill, staged in full public view. The statue stood for only decades before an earthquake broke it. There was a cruel twist in its story. After all that effort, after all that celebration, the earth shook and the giant failed. The brevity makes the achievement feel even more dramatic, because it shows how thin the line is between triumph and ruin. In the moment of collapse, the city would have faced a painful question. Do we rebuild, or do we accept the loss and live with the broken symbol? Ancient accounts suggest the fallen statue remained where it lay, and that choice turned disaster into a different kind of monument. A standing colossus says, "We overcame." A broken colossus says, "Even the greatest works are vulnerable." The earthquake did not only damage metal. It changed the story from confidence to caution, and it ensured the wonder would be remembered not just for its height, but for its sudden fragility. Fallen fragments still drew tourists for centuries. A toppled wonder can become a destination all on its own. Travelers came not to see perfection, but to see scale in the most human way, close to the ground. They could stand beside pieces and understand, with their bodies, how enormous the statue had been. A fallen giant is oddly intimate. You can imagine how seams were joined, how plates curved, and how the surface caught light. The ruins also turned into proof. Anyone could claim a city had once held a giant statue, but the fragments made the claim undeniable. That is why the broken Colossus kept its fame alive. It invited storytelling from a new angle. Visitors could describe not only a marvel, but a marvel that had been defeated by nature. And that contrast has a special power. It makes listeners lean in, because it feels like a myth told in real metal, scattered across the ground. Ancient reports say the thumb was larger than a person. That detail lands like a shock because it is so easy to picture. You do not need architectural training to grasp it. A thumb, something you can hold up in front of your eye, scaled until it dwarfs a human body. It is the kind of comparison that turns imagination into measurement. If one small part is that large, then the whole figure becomes almost unthinkable. These body part descriptions also hint at how people experienced the ruins. Travelers walking among fragments would naturally focus on recognizable forms, a hand, a foot, a face, because those pieces let the mind rebuild the statue. The thumb image also carries a subtle emotional effect. A god's hand made gigantic suggests authority, protection, and maybe judgment. Even in pieces, the statue could still make visitors feel small, not through distance, but through proximity to something that once towered above everyday life. It likely did not straddle the harbor, despite popular images. The harbor-straddling picture is irresistible, but it creates practical problems that do not fade just because the image is dramatic. A statue with legs spread across a busy waterway would complicate ship movement, construction, and stability. It is far more plausible that the Colossus stood near the port, visible to incoming vessels without blocking them. That more grounded placement is still impressive. A tall landmark near the waterfront would have dominated sightlines and announced roads from afar. The myth of straddling may have grown because people love a story that feels impossible, and because later artists found the pose thrilling to draw. This difference matters because it shows how wonder grows in the retelling. The real statue could be astonishing, and the legend could still inflate it. Separating the two does not reduce the magic. It reveals how human imagination keeps building after the builders stop. The project used captured weapons and metal from enemy machines. There is something deeply satisfying about turning instruments of destruction into a symbol of protection. After the siege, the defeated attackers left behind equipment, and the Rhodians could transform that material into art. This is victory recycling, but it is also storytelling in substance. Every bronze plate could carry an invisible history, once a weapon, now part of a god. The act would have been meaningful to citizens who remembered the fear of attack. It told them that the city did not only survive, it absorbed the threat and repurposed it. That kind of transformation changes how a community relates to trauma. Instead of letting the siege remain a wound, they turned remnants into pride. It also served as a warning to future enemies. Your machines may come ashore, but they might leave as monuments to our strength. The Colossus became a trophy you could not hide in a vault because it stood in daylight. Its short life made its legend even larger. If it had stood for centuries, it might have become familiar, then ordinary, then background. Instead, it flashed into history and vanished, and that pattern creates obsession. People speak differently about what they cannot see. They describe it with stronger words, and they fill gaps with bold images. The collapse also created a clean before and after story that is easy to remember. First a siege, then a colossus, then an earthquake, then famous ruins. That arc feels almost like a myth, which is why it traveled so far in writing and art. The statue's brief existence also sharpened its meaning. It became less about daily religious life and more about the extraordinary moment of building something wildly ambitious. The legend grew because later generations could not test it against ordinary experience. They only had reports, drawings, and imagination. And imagination rarely builds small. The Colossus shows how victory monuments can become cautionary tales. At first, it was a triumph carved into the skyline, a reminder that the city had endured and could celebrate. Then it became a warning about overconfidence, because nature can unmake what politics proclaims. That shift is what keeps the story relevant. Many cultures build monuments to say, we are safe, we are strong, we will last. The Colossus quietly replies, strength is real, but it is not absolute. An earthquake does not care what a statue represents. Yet the caution is not purely pessimistic. There is resilience here too. Even broken, the wonder still drew visitors. Even fallen, it still made people talk. The city's story survived the collapse, and the statue's meaning evolved rather than disappearing. That is the deeper lesson. A victory monument is not guaranteed to stay victorious, but it can still shape memory, inspire art, and warn future builders to respect the ground beneath their ambitions. The Lighthouse of Alexandria guided ships into one of antiquity's greatest ports. Alexandria was a magnet for merchants, sailors, and grain fleets, and its shoreline could be treacherous after dark. A towering lighthouse turned that danger into a promise. If you could spot the beacon, you could find the harbor mouth, and you could reach safety with your cargo intact. That mattered because a port is more than water and docks. It is food for cities, income for rulers, and connection to the wider world. The lighthouse became an emblem of reliability, a signal that this coastline was organized and protected. Imagine approaching after days at sea, tired and salt-soaked, and seeing a steady light that meant you were not guessing anymore. You were arriving. In a world where storms could scatter ships and erase fortunes, a guided entryway was power. The lighthouse did not only help navigation, it helped Alexandria become indispensable. It stood on Pharos, which became a word for lighthouses. The island name traveled far beyond Egypt because the structure became the island's new identity. People remembered the place by what it did for them. Over time, Pharos shifted from a proper noun into a general label for lighthouses in several languages, which is a rare kind of fame. It is like a building leaving fingerprints on everyday speech. That linguistic journey also tells you how widely sailors talked about the landmark. Seafaring communities share information fast because survival depends on it. A lighthouse that saves ships becomes a story that spreads from port to port, from tavern to dockside market. Soon, you do not just say, "There is a lighthouse." You say, "There is a pharos," meaning a tall guide that promises safe approach. Even after the original structure vanished, the word kept working. It carried the memory forward, like a small beacon inside language itself. Its beacon likely used fire and polished surfaces to project light. The genius of a lighthouse is not only height, it is focus. A fire alone glows, but it does not necessarily reach far enough to matter on open water. To become a true guide, that light must be shaped and aimed. Ancient accounts suggest a flame and reflective surfaces that help throw brightness outward, turning a local glow into a visible signal. That design would have required careful placement and constant fueling, because a beacon cannot take nights off. Think about the workers whose job was to climb, tend flame, and keep the signal steady through wind and salt air. The audience was not standing nearby. The audience was far out at sea, scanning the horizon for any sign that land was near and friendly. The result was a blend of practical engineering and sensory drama. A distant point of light could change fear into confidence in an instant. Earthquakes battered the lighthouse until it finally collapsed. The lighthouse faced a slow battle against a restless landscape. Quakes do not need to knock a tower down in one strike to win. They can crack joints, weaken corners, and loosen heavy stones so that each later tremor does more damage than the last. Repairs become harder as the structure becomes more fragile, and even minor shaking can turn into major loss. Over time, the lighthouse shifted from a confident presence to a wounded landmark, still famous, but increasingly at risk. The final collapse would have felt like losing a trusted voice in the night. Sailors who had relied on it would have had to relearn the approach, and the harbor would have felt less protected. There is also a deeper sadness here. The tower was built to fight darkness, if it could not fight the ground beneath it. Its fall reminds us that wonders live at the mercy of forces they cannot negotiate with. Medieval writers still remembered its height with awe. Long after the lighthouse was damaged, people kept talking about it as if it still stood in full glory. That persistence shows the strength of reputation in a world without photographs. If a structure is famous enough, it becomes a measuring stick for imagination. Writers used it as a symbol of scale, and they treated it as a marvel from an earlier, almost legendary age. The descriptions kept its silhouette alive, even as the real tower changed. This is how a wonder gains a second life. First, it exists as engineering, then it exists as memory, then it exists as a story that later generations inherit. Medieval accounts also reveal a craving for continuity. People living in uncertain times wanted proof that earlier societies had achieved extraordinary things. The lighthouse offered that proof. Even in partial ruin, it could dominate conversation because it represented an ideal, a human-made beacon that once stood watch over a global port. The awe outlasted the stone. The lighthouse helped protect grain shipments feeding vast cities. A lighthouse is not only romance and navigation. It can be food security, because grain does not help anyone if the ship wrecks outside the harbor. Alexandria was linked to enormous demand, and reliable arrivals mattered for stability and politics. A safe harbor approach reduced losses, improved scheduling, and made trade routes feel less like gambling. That protection rippled outward. A successful shipment could keep prices steadier, prevent panic, and support the daily bread of crowded urban life. When you picture the lighthouse, it helps to imagine what it meant on the docks. Workers unloading sacks, officials tallying cargo, merchants negotiating, and families depending on that supply without ever seeing the sea. The tower's light was a quiet partner in that chain. It helped ships arrive on time and intact, which meant cities far away could keep eating tomorrow. In that sense, the lighthouse was a public service on a monumental scale. It stood near the famed library of Alexandria's scholarly world. Alexandria was not only a city of ships, it was also a city of ideas, and the lighthouse belonged to that atmosphere of ambition. Nearby, scholars pursued texts, measurements, and debates that tried to map the world in the mind. The lighthouse fit that mission because it was applied knowledge made visible. Geometry, materials, and planning became a tower that solved a real problem. Imagine a visitor arriving by sea, guided by the beacon, then stepping into streets where learning was prized and books were collected from across cultures. The city offered two kinds of illumination at once, one for sailors and one for thinkers. That pairing is part of why Alexandria feels so magnetic in history. It presented itself as a center where human skill could tame both darkness and ignorance. The lighthouse greeted arrivals with light, and the scholarly world offered a different light inside halls and scroll rooms. Together, they shaped the city's legend as a place that aimed to guide the world. Underwater ruins near the harbor may include its fallen blocks. When a coastal monument collapses, the sea becomes both thief and vault. Waves scatter stones, sand buries details, and the shoreline shifts, yet heavy blocks can also settle into place and wait for centuries. Near Alexandria, underwater archaeology has revealed monumental remains in the harbor area, and some researchers connect pieces to structures that once barrage stood above the waterline. That possibility is thrilling because it turns the search into a dive, not a dig. Instead of dust and trenches, there is filtered light, drifting silt, and carved stone resting where it fell. It also changes how we imagine the lighthouse's end. The collapse was not only disappearance. Parts of it may still exist, just moved into a quieter museum made of seawater. Underwater finds can be difficult to interpret, and certainty is hard-earned. Yet the idea itself is powerful. A wonder that guided sailors may now lie where sailors once passed, sleeping beneath the harbor it served. The lighthouse was both practical engineering and royal propaganda. A ruler who funds a lighthouse does not just earn gratitude. They gain a symbol that towers over daily life. Every ship that arrives safely becomes a silent endorsement of the regime's competence. The lighthouse broadcast a message to foreigners before they even touched land. This city is organized. This coastline is controlled. This harbor welcomes commerce under strong protection. It also spoke to residents, since a huge public work reassures people that their leaders invest in stability. That double audience is what makes the lighthouse a masterpiece of statecraft. It performed a real task, and it performed an image of power at the same time. The tower's very visibility turned it into a logo for the kingdom, recognizable from afar. Visitors could describe it in other ports, and the story would include both the marvel and the implied authority behind it. In the ancient world, infrastructure was not politically neutral. A lighthouse was governance made luminous. It proved that safety can be built to look like majesty. Some buildings are purely useful, and some are purely ornamental. The lighthouse refused that division. It was a life-saving tool, yet it was designed to impress, rising as an architectural statement rather than a plain signal post. That choice matters because it reveals a philosophy. If you are going to build for the public good, you can also build in a way that inspires pride. Beauty can make people care for a structure, protect it, and remember it. The lighthouse turned a basic need, safe navigation, into a civic landmark that shaped identity. It also showed how engineering can be emotionally powerful. When you see a tall tower on the horizon, you do not only think, "I can dock." You feel, "I am coming to a place that takes order seriously." That feeling can calm a crew before they reach shore. majesty becomes part of safety because confidence reduces panic. The lighthouse offered protection in stone and in the mind. The new 7 wonders were announced in the year 2007. That announcement turned an old idea into a modern spectacle, with a date that people could circle and debate. Instead of ancient writers trading lists by hand, millions took part through phones, ballots, and publicity. The moment mattered because it reframed wonder as something the public could help define, not something inherited from a textbook. It also sparked arguments about what a wonder should be. Should it be ancient or simply extraordinary? Should it be chosen by popularity or by historians and engineers? Some institutions challenged the project's authority, and that criticism became part of the story. Even so, the announcement did something powerful. It pushed global audiences to look up landmarks they had never heard of and to compare distant cultures with fresh attention. In one sweep, it made heritage feel current, conversational, and worldwide. The Great Wall stretches as a system, not a single line. People often imagine one continuous ribbon of stone, but the reality is closer to a living network, built and rebuilt across centuries. Different sections serve different purposes, and the wall's story includes trenches, earthen ramparts, stone barriers, and strategic gaps. Some parts snake along ridge lines for visibility. Other parts guard passes where movement naturally funnels. There were also supporting forts and beacon points that made the barrier more than a wall. It functioned like border infrastructure, not a single monument. This changes how you picture it. The wonder is not only length. It is coverage, planning, and adaptation to terrain that ranges from mountains to deserts. When you stand on one surviving stretch, you are seeing one chapter of a vast defensive conversation between geography and politics, written over deeds, generations in earth and stone. Many wall sections were built by different dynasties for different threats. The wall is not one ruler's project. It is a relay race, with each dynasty adding, repairing, or redirecting defenses according to the dangers of its time. One era might reinforce a vulnerable pass. Another might extend barriers into a new frontier. Some sections used tamped earth because it was fast and practical. Other sections used stone and brick when resources allowed and pressure demanded durability. This layered history makes the wall feel less like a single structure and more like a record of shifting anxieties. It also explains why some segments look imposing while others look modest. They were built for different enemies, different budgets, and different strategies. The wonder is that the wall kept evolving rather than becoming obsolete overnight. It absorbed centuries of geopolitical change, and it still holds the shape of those choices across the landscape. Watchtowers served signals, storage, and control of movement. A watchtower was not just a place to stand and look. It was a node in a larger system, built to see far, respond fast, and coordinate people who might never meet face to face. From towers, guards could spot movement and send warnings along the line, creating speed that horses alone could not always match. Towers also held supplies, since a border post cannot depend on last-minute deliveries. Food, arrows, and tools could be staged where they were needed most. Then there is the quieter function, which is control. A tower oversees gates, routes, and choke points, shaping who passes and who is turned away. That means the wall was not only defense, it was administration. It managed trade, migration, and taxation at the edges of empire. Each tower was a small building with a large job, linking sight, communication, and authority into one elevated platform. Wall bricks sometimes bear stamps naming officials and workshops. On some bricks, you can find marks that feel startlingly modern, like quality control signed into clay. These stamps can record who oversaw production or which workshop supplied the materials. That turns a wall into paperwork you can touch. It suggests organized logistics, accountability, and pride, since stamped work implies someone cared enough to leave a trace of responsibility. It also changes the human scale of the monument. A massive fortification can feel anonymous, but a stamped brick feels personal. It hints at supervisors checking batches, workers shaping molds, and bureaucrats tracking output. In a way, the stamp is a fingerprint of the state. It is also a reminder that empires run on systems, not only on soldiers. Behind the dramatic ridgeline views, there were supply chains, inspections, and records that made construction possible. The wall's story includes administration pressed into every block. The wall's harsh labor stories shaped Chinese memory for centuries. A structure built for protection can also become a symbol of suffering, depending on who carried the stones. Stories about forced labor and punishing conditions attached themselves to the wall's image, and those stories were repeated in families and in folklore. They turned the wall into more than military history. It became a moral lesson about power, cost, and human endurance. The wall's scale makes those stories feel believable because people instinctively ask what kind of labor could raise something so vast. Even when details blur across time, the emotional truth persists. Massive projects often demand sacrifice, and the memory of that sacrifice can outlast the political reasons that launched the work. This is why the wall can inspire pride and sorrow at once. It is a triumph of organization and engineering, and it is also a reminder that grandeur often has a hidden price paid by ordinary bodies. Petra's facades were carved directly into living rock. Instead of stacking blocks upward, builders in Petra cut inward, turning a cliff into architecture. That reversal feels magical when you first see it, because the building looks freestanding, yet it is part of the mountain itself. The stone holds the memory of every chisel strike, and the canyon setting makes the reveal dramatic, as if the city is hiding until the path suddenly opens. Carving into rock demands a different kind of planning than ordinary construction. You cannot adjust later by moving walls. One mistake can scar the surface forever. That means the builders likely worked from the top down, removing material with care so falling debris did not ruin finished details. The result is both bold and delicate, with columns, niches, and symmetry shaped from what once looked like solid wilderness. Petra turns geology into a canvas, and it makes you feel as if the landscape learned to speak in architecture. Nabatean engineers managed flash floods with channels and dams. Petra sits in a region where water can arrive violently, rushing through narrow valleys with little warning. That danger could destroy a settlement, unless you treat water as something to guide rather than something to endure. The Nabateans built channels, barriers, and control points that redirected floodwater away from vulnerable areas. They also captured water for later use, turning a threat into a resource. This is engineering as survival strategy, and it is part of why Petra could thrive where you might expect only emptiness. Imagine the sudden storm far upstream, then a roaring surge racing toward the city. With the right system, that same surge can be tamed, split, and stored. The achievement is not only technical, it is psychological. A city that can control floods can feel secure enough to invest in beauty, trade, and ceremony. Petra's grandeur rests on unseen infrastructure that kept disaster at bay. Petra thrived on trade routes linking Arabia, Egypt, and Rome. Location can be destiny, and Petra's location made it a meeting point for goods, languages, and ideas. Caravans carried incense, spices, and other prized cargo across harsh distances, and Petra offered a place to rest, exchange, and negotiate. Trade is not only buying and selling. It is information moving with the merchants, and it can turn a city into a crossroads of culture. Petra's wealth shows up in its architecture, since carving monumental facades requires time, skill, and confidence that the future will keep paying. It also shows up in its influence, because a trading city learns diplomacy as a daily habit. Different empires could press in, yet trade encourages flexibility, alliances, and adaptation. In that sense, Petra was not isolated. It was connected to a wider world by routes that stitched deserts to ports and capitals. Its success was built on movement, and its wonder is partly the story of how commerce can build cities where nature seems to say no. The city's water system made desert life feel almost effortless. Petra's most impressive trick may not be the carved stone you see first. It may be how the city made water dependable in a place where it is usually uncertain. A network of cisterns, pipes, and collection points helped store precious rainfall and control how it was distributed. This turns daily life upside down. When water is scarce, everything is limited. When water is managed, a city can support markets, gardens, animals, and travelers passing through. It also changes social rhythm, since reliable water allows planning beyond tomorrow. The system would have required maintenance and rules, because stored water invites both care and conflict. Yet when it works, it creates an illusion of ease. Visitors might see fountains and assume abundance, not realizing how much planning sits behind each drop. Petra's water management is a reminder that the most powerful wonders are sometimes the ones you barely notice, because they make survival look simple. The Colosseum hosted gladiators, animal hunts, and staged dramas. Inside that oval of stone, entertainment became a language of empire. Gladiators fought with carefully trained styles, and their matchups could feel like living theater, with heroes, villains, and sudden reversals. Animal hunts brought lions, bears, and other creatures into a space designed to control chaos, and the crowd watched danger at close range while feeling safely above it. Some shows recreated myths, so a familiar story gained a terrifying edge when real weapons and real animals were involved. The arena could also stage public punishments, which made law itself part of the spectacle. For a first-time visitor, the shock was not only violence, it was organization. Schedules, seating, and ceremony turned a vast crowd into one coordinated audience. The Colosseum was a stage where Rome displayed power, discipline, and appetite, all at once, and it did it in a building built to amplify sound and emotion. Its awning system shaded crowds with coordinated rope teams. Picture the sun beating down on packed seating for hours, then imagine fabric wings unfurling above the audience like sails. The Colosseum's awning, often called the velarium, required planning and trained crews to handle ropes, poles, and tension. It was not a simple tarp thrown across. It was a controlled canopy that had to respond to wind and changing light, and it had to do so without collapsing onto the crowd. Sailors were likely involved because rigging is a nautical skill, and the arena needed people who understood knots, leverage, and teamwork. When the shade spread, it changed the whole experience. People could stay longer, tempers could cool, and the event could feel less like endurance and more like luxury. That matters because comfort is part of control. A shaded audience is a calmer audience. The awning was engineering that served politics, and it turned a brutal arena into a place that could still feel carefully managed. Romans used numbered entrances to move tens of thousands efficiently. The real marvel is how quickly the Colosseum could fill and empty without collapsing into panic. Numbered entrances acted like a system of addresses, guiding people to specific routes and seats. Instead of one massive crush point, the crowd could be distributed through many passages, stairways, and corridors that worked like a human circulatory system. This is architecture designed for movement, not just for viewing. It also reflects Rome's talent for organization, since a building of this size becomes dangerous if it relies on improvisation. With assigned access, an event could start on time, officials could control who sat where, and social hierarchies could be enforced without constant shouting. For the audience, the effect was almost modern. You arrive, you find your number, you flow into place. That quiet efficiency made the spectacle possible, because the building could handle human scale as confidently as it handled stone. Chichén Itzá reflects a city shaped by astronomy, politics, and ritual. This was not just a cluster of buildings. It was a statement about how the Maya and their neighbors organized time, authority, and sacred life. Astronomical observation mattered because calendars guided agriculture, ceremonies, and leadership claims. When a city can predict seasons and plan rituals, it can also project legitimacy. Chichén Itzá's layout suggests spaces designed for gatherings, processions, and public moments that fused belief with governance. Leaders used ritual to unify people and architecture to make those rituals feel inevitable. The city also reflects shifting alliances and influences, since styles and symbols point to a wider world of trade and power. Walking through the site today, you can sense that it was built to be understood, not only by residents, but by visitors and rivals. It communicated sophistication in stone. It told people, our knowledge orders the sky, our ceremonies order society, and our city belongs at the center of both. The pyramid's sound effects can mimic a bird call by chance. Some visitors clap near the Great Staircase and hear a sharp echo that reminds them of a quetzal's cry, and the effect has sparked endless stories. Whether or not the builders intended it, the moment is still enchanting, because it reveals how architecture can shape sound like an invisible sculpture. Hard stone surfaces, stepped geometry, and open air can bounce noise in surprising ways, and the human brain loves to turn echoes into meaning. That is why the experience sticks. You make a simple sound, and the building answers with something that feels alive. It becomes a conversation between body and monument. The effect also invites a deeper curiosity. How did ancient people experience acoustics during ceremonies, speeches, or music in plazas? Even without modern theory, builders learned what carried, what softened, and what astonished crowds. In that sense, the pyramid is not only a visual wonder. It is an instrument that can still be played, and it still surprises the player. Maya ball games were sport, diplomacy, and sacred drama combined. A ball game could look like athletics, yet it carried stakes that reached far beyond points. Teams represented communities and leaders, and a match could serve as a formal way to manage rivalry without open war. The court itself was a stage, built to focus attention and turn movement into public meaning. The ball was heavy, the play was physical, and the skill required was intense, which made the contest gripping for spectators. Yet the game also lived inside a ritual world, where stories about gods, fate, and cosmic order shaped how people interpreted victory and loss. That blend makes it fascinating. Imagine a crowd watching an athletic clash while also sensing that something symbolic is unfolding, something that connects the living city to the deeper structure of the bell universe. Even diplomacy can feel sacred when it is performed in front of thousands. The ball game offered excitement, negotiation, and ceremony in one dramatic package, and it helped bind politics to belief. Machu Picchu's stonework fits so tightly that blades cannot slip in. The first time you see those joints, the mind searches for mortar. then realizes there is none. Stones meet with such care that gaps seem to vanish, and the walls look poured rather than assembled. This precision was not only for beauty. It helped the city endure in a landscape where earth tremors and heavy rains are part of life. When stones interlock well, a wall can flex slightly without shattering, and that resilience matters on a mountain ridge. The work also demanded deep knowledge of rock, since each block had to be shaped to match its neighbors in 3 dimensions. It is puzzle-making on a monumental scale. That effort suggests patient labor, careful selection of stone, and a culture that valued enduring craftsmanship. The result feels intimate despite the grandeur, because it invites close looking. You lean in, you trace a seam, and you feel the presence of hands that refuse to accept almost fitting as good enough. Its terraces prevented erosion and created microclimates for farming. Terraces are a quiet kind of brilliance. On steep slopes, rain can strip soil away, and farming becomes a losing battle. By shaping the hillside into stepped platforms, the builders slowed water, held earth in place, and created stable ground where crops could grow. Those stone retaining walls also absorbed heat in daylight and released it later, which can soften temperature swings and help plants survive. Different levels can catch different sunlight and wind, so a single mountainside can hold many growing conditions. This is agriculture as landscape engineering. It reveals a society that understood not only how to build temples and homes, but how to feed a community in a challenging setting. The terraces also changed how people moved, turning the mountain into a series of walkable stages rather than one harsh climb. In that way, farming shaped daily life and the city's beauty at the same time. The green steps are part of the architecture, and the architecture is part of the survival plan. The site was unknown to most outsiders until the 20th century. For centuries, the city remained largely absent from global conversation, which is astonishing when you consider how dramatic it is. Its mountain setting helped keep it out of sight, and later political changes shifted attention elsewhere. Local knowledge did not vanish, but international awareness lagged, and that gap created a rare moment in modern history. A major Inca site could still feel like a revelation rather than a familiar icon. When outsiders began to publicize it widely, the world suddenly had a new symbol of the Inca, and imagination rushed in fast. That rapid fame shaped how people understand the past, since new discoveries can rewrite what feels central. It also brought difficult questions about excavation, ownership, and what should happen when a quiet place becomes a global destination. The site's modern story is therefore part wonder and part warning. Finding it changed scholarship, tourism, and local life all at once, and it reminds us that history is not only what happened. It is also what becomes widely known. The Taj Mahal was built as a tomb for Mumtaz Mahal. At its heart, the Taj Mahal is grief turned into architecture, commissioned by an emperor who wanted memory to become permanent. The result is not a simple memorial. It is a carefully planned complex where symmetry and proportion create a sense of calm order, as if emotion has been shaped into balance. The white marble surface catches shifting light, and it makes the building feel different from morning to evening, which suits a monument dedicated to love and loss. The gardens and pathways guide visitors toward the central tomb, turning approach into a slow, deliberate experience. Yet the Taj is also political. A ruler who can command such craftsmanship and such resources is showing power, even while expressing devotion. That combination is part of its spell. It is intimate in purpose, yet imperial in scale. Standing before it, you feel how personal sorrow can become public art, and how a private relationship can reshape a nation's image for centuries. Its marble changes tone with daylight, moonlight, and weather. White marble is not truly white in the way paper is white. It is a surface that drinks in the color of the sky, then gives it back with a softer voice. In early morning, the Taj can look cool and pale, almost blue, because the air itself is blue. At midday, it brightens toward a sharper glow, and details feel crisp against shadow. At sunset, it can warm toward honeyed tones, as if the building is holding the day's last warmth. Moonlight changes it again. The monument can seem almost silver, and the hard edges feel calmer. Weather adds another layer. A hazy day can blur the outline and make it seem distant, while rain can deepen contrast and make marble look freshly polished. This shifting color is part of the design's emotional power. The building never looks exactly the same twice. Craftsmen inlaid semi-precious stones into marble like painted thread. Instead of relying on paint that would fade, artisans set color directly into the stone, piece by piece. Tiny cuts were carved into marble, then fitted with stones such as jasper, carnelian, and lapis to form flowers, leaves, and flowing vines. The work demanded steady hands and strong patience, because a single slip could ruin hours of effort. From a distance, the decoration reads as gentle patterning. Up close, it becomes a miracle of precision, with edges that meet cleanly and curves that stay graceful at the smallest scale. This technique turns the walls into a quiet garden that never wilts. It also turns light into a collaborator, because polished inlay catches highlights differently than marble does. The result is movement without motion. As you walk, the patterns seem to shift, and the building rewards attention in a way that feels almost intimate. The Taj's calligraphy grows larger higher up to look uniform. At ground level, your eyes judge size in a very human way. What is near looks big, and what is far looks small. The designers of the Taj used that fact and turned it into subtle optical craft. Quranic calligraphy placed higher on the building was made larger, so from below it appears consistent with the writing closer to eye level. This is not decoration done at random. It is a planned experience, built for a viewer standing in a courtyard with neck craned and breath caught. The illusion creates calm, because the mind loves order it can trust. If the upper lines looked smaller, you might feel the building's height more harshly. By correcting perspective, the monument feels balanced, as if it is meeting you halfway. It is a reminder that great architecture is not only stone and symmetry. It is also psychology, carefully guided. Christ the Redeemer stands as both monument and lightning target. On a high peak above Rio, the statue's location is part of its meaning. It is meant to be seen from far across the city, which also means it stands exposed to weather that sweeps in fast. Storms gather over the mountains, and lightning naturally seeks high points. Over the years, strikes have damaged parts of the statue, including fingers and sections of the head, and repairs have been needed to restore the surface. That vulnerability makes the monument feel more human, even though it is enormous. It is not a symbol floating above nature. It is a structure inside nature, taking real risk in real storms. There is something dramatic in that. The statue is built to represent protection and presence, yet it must also be protected itself. Each repair is a quiet act of caretaking, and each storm is a reminder that even icons stand under the same sky as everyone else. Its interior includes a small chapel hidden inside the structure. Most people see the statue from below, where it reads as a single, solid figure against the sky. It is surprising to learn that there is an interior space at all. Inside, a small chapel sits within the monument, turning the statue from a symbol you look at into a place you can enter. That changes the experience in a subtle way. Outside, the scale can feel distant and untouchable. Inside, the feeling becomes closer, more personal. more like a pause from the wind and brightness of the summit. The existence of the chapel also speaks to intent. The statue was not meant only for postcards. It was meant to hold devotion, even if only in a modest room. There is a special quiet in hidden spaces, especially when they are tucked inside something the whole world recognizes. The chapel is a reminder that monuments can contain interior lives, not only exterior spectacle. Rio's statue became a global image through postcards and cinema. Fame is not only earned by height and location, it is carried by repetition. When postcards began to circulate widely, the statue offered an instantly readable silhouette, arms open over a dramatic landscape. That image traveled faster than most people could travel, and it became shorthand for Rio itself. Cinema deepened that effect. A single establishing shot could tell an audience where a story was set, even if no character said the city's name. Over time, the statue became a kind of visual passport stamp, recognized across languages and cultures. That recognition changes the way visitors arrive. Many people feel they have seen the monument before they ever stand beneath it. That familiarity can make the real encounter even more powerful, because the body finally catches up with the image. You realize the wind is real, the climb is real, and the city spread below is not a screen. The statue's modern wonder includes this media life, where stone becomes a global symbol. Rome's ancient forums once rivaled modern downtowns in daily bustle. It is easy to imagine ancient ruins as silent, but the forums were once loud with bargaining, gossip, and urgent business. People came to hear speeches, argue cases, make deals, and seek favors. Temples stood near government buildings, and sacred life brushed against politics in the same walk. Statues and arches were not museum pieces. They were street scenery, loaded with messages about power and identity. Vendors and crowds moved through spaces that now look empty, and the ground would have been full of footsteps from every social level. That bustle mattered because it shows what Rome was really doing. It was not only building monuments, it was running an empire through conversation, paperwork, and performance in public view. The Forum was a stage where reputation could rise or collapse in an afternoon. If you picture it as a downtown district, the ruins become easier to understand. They were infrastructure for daily life, not backdrops for history. Giza's plateau holds multiple pyramids, temples, and royal cemeteries. When people say they are going to see the Great Pyramid, they often picture one building and nothing else. In reality, the plateau is a whole funerary landscape, planned with the seriousness of a capital city. Multiple pyramids rise from the site, each part of a broader story of rulers, families, and changing styles across generations. Temples and causeways once structured ceremonies, and they guided movement in ways that shaped what people saw and felt. Nearby cemeteries held officials and relatives, which reveals how power gathered in death as well as in life. Even the empty spaces matter, because placement was intentional. Lines of sight, pathways, and sacred zones were arranged to support ritual and hierarchy. Seeing the plateau as a complex changes the scale of the wonder. It is not one extraordinary project. It is a long tradition of building, planning, and belief, layered into a single landscape where the desert became a map of royal ambition. The wonders inspired replicas, from casinos to parks to school projects. A wonder does not end at its original site. Once an image becomes famous, people start rebuilding it in miniature, in playful imitation, or in ambitious homage. Replicas appear in theme parks, city skylines, and even classroom models, because copying is a way of touching something distant. A child shaping a pyramid from cardboard is joining the same fascination as an architect designing a hotel shaped like a monument. These recreations also reveal what each era values. Some replicas chase spectacle and tourism. Some aim for education. Some are humorous, and some are sincere. Even when a replica is imperfect, it can spark curiosity and send someone toward the real history. That is part of the wonders modern power. They act like cultural seeds. A single famous silhouette can grow into countless versions, each one carrying the idea into a new place. In a strange way, replication keeps the wonders alive, even when originals are ruined, distant, or protected behind limits. Wonder lists reveal what each era fears losing and chooses to remember. A list is never neutral. It is a mirror held up to the person making it. Ancient lists favored the reach of their known world, and they highlighted monuments tied to prestige, religion, and power. Modern lists often emphasize global inclusion, visibility, and shared pride, even when that creates arguments about popularity and politics. In every era, a wonder is not only a building. It is a choice about what deserves attention. That choice reveals fears. People fear forgetting great achievements. They fear losing identity. They fear that time will erase meaning. So they point to a handful of sites and say, "Remember these." The process also creates hope, because choosing wonders suggests that humans can make things worth passing on. It turns history into a set of touchstones that guide curiosity across centuries. When you look at any wonder list, you are seeing two histories at once. You are seeing the past that built the monuments, and you are seeing the present that decided those monuments still matter. Tonight, we wandered through the long hallway of human ambition, and we paused at doorways that still leave people breathless. We traced the old seven wonders, born from travelers' lists and carried forward by rumor, ruin, and awe. We stood in the shadow of the Great Pyramid, a lone survivor that still holds the desert in its quiet grip. We imagined gardens rising where water was precious, a green dream balanced on engineering and devotion. We stepped into temples built to overwhelm, and into a sanctuary where Zeus once seemed to fill the air itself. We watched a tower on Pharos turn fire into guidance, and we felt how even the greatest landmarks can be shaken by the earth. Then we moved into newer wonders, chosen by modern voices across the world. Walls that stretch like a system of memory across mountains. A rock-carved city that learned to tame sudden floods. Arenas that held entire crowds in a single heartbeat. Mountain stones fitted so closely they seemed to refuse time. Marble that changes its mood with sky and light. Each place, ancient or modern, asked the same gentle question. What do human beings build when they want to be remembered? If you enjoyed this journey, you might take a moment to like and subscribe, or leave a small comment below. It helps this channel reach others who need a calm place to land. And if you are still awake, there is another video waiting for you on the screen. Another path through history to follow at your own pace. For now, let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw unclench. Let the stories settle like sand after a breeze, until the world feels quieter inside your mind. Breathe in and out, and let the darkness do what it does best. Sleep well, and good night.